wasn't the kind of place you'd book for a honeymoon. The Holland Arms Hotel had once been a grand Victorian escape, before time, tragedy, and neglect dragged it into the shadows of local legend. These days, the building sat crooked on the edge of town like an elderly widow no one visited. Paint peeled like sunburnt skin. The neon sign sputtered Hall Sous Arms in flickers. Most people assumed it was shut down for good, but it wasn't. It operated quietly, just enough to claim it was still a business. And I was the new night manager. I got the job through a temp agency. 2 shifts a week, midnight to 6, cash under the table. No experience required, just a calm demeanor and willingness to follow a few important procedures. That last part didn't register as a red flag until much later. On my first night, I arrived at 11:45 p.m. sharp as instructed. The parking lot was empty except for an old Crown Vic and a silver cargo van with no plates. I assumed one was the owner's. The other, I didn't ask. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit, dusty, and smelled faintly of lavender and bleach, like someone had tried to cover up something much worse. Behind the front desk sat a clipboard, a ring of antique room keys, and a folded sheet of paper with the word "Rules" scrawled across the top in thick black marker. I unfolded it. House rules, night shift. Check-in guests only between 12:01 to 12:07 a.m. No early or late arrivals. Never assign room 209. Do not speak about it. If a room key is returned without the guest being seen, do not investigate. If you hear the elevator running between 2 and 3 a.m., do not look at it. The mirror in the lobby bathroom must remain covered at all times. If a guest comes down and complains about the scratching, offer no apologies, only the guest log to sign. I stared at the list longer than I should have, waiting for the punchline. But nothing about this felt like a joke. The paper was aged, creased from use. The pen ink bled slightly, like it had been clutched too tightly by too many trembling hands. A small brass bell sat on the desk, glinting under the single working light. As I reached for it, something creaked overhead, a floorboard shifting in the ceiling. I froze. I hadn't seen anyone else here. I hadn't checked anyone in. Just the building settling, I told myself. Old hotels do that. I found the guest log. 6 entries from the past 2 months. No names, just dates and one-word notes beside each. Left early. Refused refund. Returned key. No checkout. Screaming stopped at 3:12. Didn't make it to the checkout. Back again. I nearly walked out, but I didn't. Rent was due, and my car was 2 payments from repossession. So I stayed. I tucked the rules into my back pocket like a talisman and sat behind the counter, pretending none of this felt wrong. 12:01 a.m. The lobby clock ticked over with a hollow chime, and right on cue, the front doors groaned open. A man in a dark wool coat stepped inside, his face gaunt and his eyes sunken as if sleep hadn't touched him in years. He said nothing, just placed $200 in cash on the counter and slid a torn scrap of paper toward me. Room 208. I reached for the corresponding key, hesitating only briefly at the one right next to it. Room 209. The tag on that key looked newer than the rest. Too new, as if it was replaced often. I gave him 208. He took it without a word, turned, and disappeared up the stairs. No elevator, no luggage. I noted the time. 12:05 a.m. within the rule window. Nothing else happened for the next hour. Just silence, save for the occasional floor creak or wind howling against the old windows. At 1:47 a.m., I heard it. The elevator. A deep mechanical whir. chains pulling, the hum of movement. I turned instinctively, but caught myself. Rule 4. If you hear the elevator running between 2 and 3 a.m., do not look at it. I dropped my gaze, gripping the counter, breath shallow. The elevator dinged. I heard the doors open, then close, but no footsteps followed. A moment later, something slid across the desk in front of me. It was the key to room 208, and the man never came back down. I stared at the key to room 208 like it might bite me. It lay flat on the counter, harmless and cold. But the way it got there, the way nothing got off that elevator, sent a chill I couldn't shake. I hadn't looked directly at it. I followed the rule. But still, something had ridden it down and left me that key. My first instinct was to call someone. But who? The listing hadn't come from a corporate chain. There was no manager to reach after hours. No number posted. And the lobby phone? Dead. The cord was cut right where it plugged into the wall, like it had been yanked out in haste. I waited another hour. No guests, no noise. I sat in silence, fingers tapping the desk, eyes flicking toward the elevator every few minutes, just to make sure it stayed closed. By 3:30, the air grew heavier. The old radiator began to hiss louder, releasing bursts of heat that did nothing to cut the damp chill sinking into my bones. I reached for the room logbook, flipping to last night's page. No entry. But the page was wrinkled, as if someone had pressed down hard while writing, then ripped the sheet out. A single pen mark remained, the faint downward stroke of a cursive J or Y. Nothing else. The hotel had secrets. That much was obvious. But what unsettled me more was how those secrets didn't seem buried. They were just sitting in plain view, waiting for someone like me to trip over them. At 3:44 a.m., I heard the front door. It didn't open. It didn't swing or creak. It knocked. Just once. A single, deliberate knock that echoed through the lobby like a gunshot. I stood there, frozen, one hand halfway to the flashlight I kept under the desk. No rule covered this. Not the knocking, not the doors. I stepped around the counter, slow and careful, and approached the entrance. No one there. Just mist rolling in from the road and the neon sign humming overhead. I turned back toward the desk and nearly screamed. A woman stood there. She hadn't been there a moment ago, I was sure of it. But now she was in the center of the lobby, facing the key rack. Her back was to me. She wore a pale green coat, the hem dripping wet as if she'd walked through a thunderstorm. Her hair was long, dark, tangled. She didn't move, didn't flinch. I swallowed hard. "Ma'am," my voice cracked. "Can I help you?" She lifted a hand, slow, like her arm weighed more than it should, and pointed. Room 209. I shook my head before the word even left my mouth. That room isn't available. She didn't respond, just kept pointing. "I can get you another room," I offered. 206 is open, 212, even a suite. Tap, tap. Her nails scraped the edge of the key hook labeled 209. Not touching the key, just tapping near it, rhythmically, methodically, like she was counting something I couldn't hear. I stepped behind the desk and reached for 212. "Here," I said. "This one's clean. It's even got a window facing the hills." The woman didn't move, didn't turn. Then she spoke, though not with words. It was more like a noise, a low croak, like a voice unused for decades finally cracking open. "You already put someone in 209. My blood ran cold. "No," I said, too fast. "I didn't. I can't. It's against. You did." Her voice grated like sandpaper over wet stone. "You thought it was 208. I looked down at the key still lying on the desk. Right? I picked it up. The brass was darker than I remembered. The number tag had faded. My thumb brushed it. Flaked paint came off like dry skin. And underneath, a 9, not an 8. Room 209. My stomach lurched. I remembered the key rack. The tags. They were all hand-painted. Some numbers rubbed thin. Had I? Number. That man asked for 208. I was sure of it. Wasn't I? The woman turned her head slowly, just enough to glance at me from the corner of her eye. That eye was pale, cloudy, dead, not empty anymore, she whispered, and just like that, she vanished. No footsteps, no breath, no exit. Gone. I stood there, cold sweat rolling down my back, heart thudding in my chest like a war drum. Then I did the one thing I wasn't supposed to do. I took the master key and I went upstairs to check room 209. The upstairs hallway was colder than the lobby. Not physically, but spiritually. The kind of cold that clings to your ribs and whispers in your ear that something is terribly, terribly wrong. I reached the second floor and stopped just beyond the landing. Flashlight in one hand, master key in the other. The carpet beneath my feet was faded burgundy, curling at the edges, spotted with patches too dark to name. The sconces on the walls flickered weakly, emitting more shadow than light. Rooms 200 through 210 lined the corridor like tired sentinels. And there it was, 209, sitting at the far end of the hallway like a tumor in the building's spine. Its brass numbers were crooked. The paint peeled more here than anywhere else. The doorknob had a faint smear of something oily across it. I couldn't tell if it was old or recent. I hesitated. The rules hadn't told me what to do if I accidentally gave someone that room. They just said not to assign it, not to speak about it. I didn't mean to. But did that matter? I stepped closer. My flashlight beam trembled across the door, revealing a small detail I hadn't expected. The keyhole was already turned. The door was unlocked. Someone or something had opened it. Maybe the man I checked in. Maybe the woman from the lobby. Maybe neither. My pulse quickened. I reached out and gently pushed the door open. Creak. The room beyond was dark, still, oppressively silent, but not empty. The light switch near the entrance did nothing. I swung my flashlight in a slow arc. A twin bed made with perfectly creased white sheets, a dusty dresser, a cracked lampshade, pale green curtains drawn shut, motionless, and on the floor, a pair of wet shoes, men's dress shoes, old, scuffed. One was turned slightly toward the door, as if someone had been standing there, watching. The air inside the room pressed against me like a clenched fist. "Hello?" I called, instantly regretting it. The word echoed back too quickly, like the room was trying to spit it out. No response. I moved inside, careful not to step past the edge of the rug. Every instinct I had screamed, "Don't go further. Don't go in." I went in anyway. There was no one in the bed, no one behind the curtains, no one in the closet, though I refused to let the door shut behind me. I kept one foot wedged against it at all times, but there was something strange on the wall. Opposite the bed, etched into the wallpaper in long, spidery letters, were 5 words: "We don't leave when asked." Underneath it, scratched even deeper: "Stop checking us in." My breath caught in my throat. That's when the door slammed behind me. A gust of air blew out my flashlight. I was plunged into darkness. I spun, heart pounding, fumbling with the light. My fingers trembled. The switch clicked once, twice, nothing. Then I heard it. A voice, low, gravelly, just inches from my ear. Wasn't supposed to see it. I turned, too fast, too wild, and collided with the dresser, sending a drawer crashing to the floor. My flashlight flared back to life in the chaos. There was no one there. I scrambled to the door, grabbing the knob and twisting. It didn't budge. Locked. Deadbolt slid into place from the inside, but I hadn't touched it. I slammed my palm against it. Open, open, open. Behind me, the bed creaked. I turned. The sheets were moving, rising. Something was in them. Not crawling, not walking, just forming. A shape pressing up from beneath, like a body being poured back into existence under the covers. I didn't wait. I pulled out the master key, shoved it into the lock, and twisted hard. Nothing. It wouldn't turn. I tried again, sweat pouring down my face. Behind me, the shape in the bed shifted. I heard breathing now, wet, wheezing, deliberate. Then a second sound, keys jingling. From the hallway. Someone was coming. Footsteps approached slowly, then stopped right outside the door. A soft knock. I froze. Then came a woman's voice. "You're not supposed to be in there." It wasn't angry. It was sad. "Please," I whispered, "help me." Another pause, and then, click. The lock turned on its own. The door swung open. No one stood there, just an empty hallway. I didn't look back. I didn't thank anyone. I just ran. Down the hall, down the stairs, back to the desk. The key to room 209 was gone, but in its place sat a new one. Room 210. Already checked in. I didn't remember checking in room 210, but there it was. The brass key resting on the front desk. Its tag freshly polished, the number impossibly clean. I stared at it, hands trembling, heart still hammering from the trap room 209 had become. I looked through the guest log. No entry for 210, no signature, no timestamp. Still, the key was gone from the rack. Now it sat there again, returned. Except, I never saw anyone come down. Rule number 3 came crashing back into my thoughts. If a room key is returned without the guest being seen, do not investigate. Right. I wasn't going back upstairs. Not tonight. Instead, I locked the lobby doors, flipped the closed sign on a hotel that hadn't seen a day shift in years, and collapsed behind the desk. At some point, I must have nodded off. I dreamed I was still behind the counter, but the hotel was upside down. Gravity pulled me toward the ceiling, where chandeliers grew from the floor and the keys on the rack melted like wax. Every door opened at once. All the guests stepped into the hallway in unison. They didn't have faces. They turned toward me. They all said the same thing at once. Wrong room, wrong time, wrong you. I snapped awake with a gasp, drenched in sweat. It was still dark, still night, and the elevator was humming again. I didn't look, I didn't breathe. The mechanical whir rose steadily, then stopped with a soft ding. Moments passed, no footsteps. I risked a glance at the guest log. A new name had appeared, D. Thatcher, signed in thick, slanted ink. Room 211. No time logged, no ID, just the name. I hadn't written it, I hadn't spoken to anyone. But there it was, and worse, beneath the signature was a note. "Do you understand yet?" I stepped back from the desk. The pen next to the logbook twitched, slid half an inch on its own. I grabbed the rule sheet from my pocket, desperate for something familiar. Rule number 1. Check in guests only between 12:01 to 12:07 a.m. Rule number 2. Never assign room 209. Rule number 3. If a room key is returned without the guest being seen, do not investigate. Rule number 4. If you hear the elevator between 2 and 3 a.m., do not look at it. Rule number 5. The mirror in the lobby bathroom must remain covered. Rule number 6. If a guest complains about the scratching, offer only the guest log. I'd broken at least 2, probably more, but something else was wrong. I flipped the page over. It hadn't been blank before. Now it was filled with handwriting, different from the original rules. Sloppier, frantic, just one repeated line over and over again in black ink. Don't look in the mirror. I turned toward the hallway that led to the lobby bathroom. The mirror had always been covered, an old floral bedsheet thumbtacked into the tile grout. I'd never questioned it, never cared. But now, there were footsteps inside. Slow, slippered, shuffling like someone dragging one foot behind the other. They stopped. Then something knocked from inside the bathroom. Once, twice, then nothing. The silence was unbearable. I inched closer. I didn't want to. Every muscle in my body screamed to run the other way. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. Halfway down the hall, I saw it. The sheet had slipped just the corner, enough for the mirror to reflect part of the opposite wall. And in that reflection, not in the hallway itself, I saw someone standing directly behind me. My breath hitched. I didn't turn. I backed away, one slow step at a time, watching the mirror. The reflection didn't move. The hallway was empty, but the mirror showed a man, tall, thin, wearing the exact same clothes as me. His head tilted slowly as I retreated. His arms didn't move. He just watched. And then, he smiled. The smile was wrong. Too wide, too many teeth. Like a shadow pretending to be human but forgetting what a mouth was supposed to look like. I turned and bolted. I didn't look back. Not in the mirror, not in the hallway, not at the key rack where 2 more keys had returned silently while I was gone. 212 and 213. The hotel was filling itself. With who or what, I didn't know. But they weren't guests. They weren't people. And they weren't leaving. I no longer trusted the clocks. At some point, time inside the Holland Arms had shifted, stretched, broken. Every tick of the lobby clock felt like it echoed twice, like it was unsure whether it was moving forward or backward. My phone had no signal. The display was frozen at 2:47 a.m. It had said 2:47 for what felt like hours. Room keys kept appearing. 214, then 215. By now, more than half the rack was full of returned keys. No checkouts, no guests, just silent arrivals and disappearances. The hotel wasn't accepting visitors. It was collecting them. I flipped through the guest log, desperate for anything that made sense. But the pages had changed. Names I didn't recognize were scrawled in ink that hadn't been there before. Page after page filled with initials, dates, sometimes just one-word entries like "returned screaming." Found inside the wall. Still scratching. He let them out. He is becoming. And then I found something worse. My name. Not once, not twice, dozens of times. Same name, same handwriting, same shift, entries dated weeks apart, months even, long past and far future. 12:03 a.m., J. Miles, room 205. 12:06 a.m., J. Miles, room 209. 12:04 a.m., J. Miles, no room given, still taken. Every version of me had worked this shift. Every version had the same name. I dropped the logbook, bile rising in my throat. My hand trembled as I backed away. That's when I heard it again. Scratching. Not on the walls, not above or below, inside the front desk. I crouched slowly, pulling open the cabinet doors, unsure what I expected. Rats, maybe, or a broken pipe. But what I found made my skin crawl. Taped to the inside panel of the desk was a small square photograph. Polaroid, faded and curled at the edges. It showed me, standing behind the desk, wearing the same shirt, same expression. Only, the person taking the photo was on the inside of the counter, as if they were sitting where I was now. Written across the bottom, "Smile, you're almost checked in." I dropped the photo. Behind me, the bell on the desk rang. Ding! I froze. No one stood there, but the guest log was open again, pen upright, and a name being written, without a hand to write it. Letter by letter, J-M-Y. I slapped the book shut, and that's when I saw the elevator doors, open, wide, empty, waiting. Rule number 4. If you hear the elevator between 2 and 3 a.m., do not look at it. I had never looked before, but now it was impossible not to. Inside the elevator was a mirror, identical to the one in the bathroom, and in its reflection, every room key was missing. Every single one. The rack behind me was still full, but the reflection showed it empty. I stared in disbelief. Something inside the mirror moved. I took a step closer. The elevator floor was dusty, coated in footprints leading out. Bare footprints, dozens of them. Some small, some misshapen, some with clawed toes. All pointed into the lobby. None went back in. Then, the mirror flickered, and I saw myself, but not me. His face was wrong, paler, hollow-eyed, skin stretched thin. He looked at me the way an animal looks at its reflection. Curious, predatory, confused. He tilted his head. So did I. He didn't. He smiled, and raised one hand, pressing his palm flat against the glass. I stumbled back. The elevator doors began to close, slowly, silently. Just before they sealed shut, the reflection mouthed 2 words. "Your turn." The lights above me dimmed. Every room door upstairs slammed shut at once. Bang, bang, bang. Then silence. And then, the phone on the desk rang. A heavy, mechanical ring I hadn't heard once since I started. I picked it up. The line hissed with static. Then a voice. "You're late to check in." "Who is this?" I whispered, but I already knew. The voice was mine. I dropped the phone. Let it swing on the cord, swaying like a pendulum between this world and something deeper. The voice on the other end, my voice, still crackled faintly, whispering words I couldn't unhear. "You're already here." I backed away from the desk. The rules crumpled in my fist. The air felt heavier. The walls are closer. Every bulb overhead dimmed until the lobby was soaked in a sickly amber glow. And then, the elevator dinged. Again. It opened slower this time. Creaking, like something inside was tired of pretending to be a machine. Inside, it was empty, physically. But I felt something watching me. And behind the mirrored walls, the reflection had changed. Now, the lobby was empty. No desk, no rack of keys, no me, just the elevator. And one door opens upstairs. Room 205. I hadn't seen it checked in. I didn't even remember assigning it. But I knew, deep in my bones, that it was for me. It has always been for me. The elevator pulsed with low electrical hums, impatient. A force behind my ribs pushed me forward. I don't remember walking in, but I remember the doors closing behind me with a sound like a coffin lid. The buttons flickered. Only one lit up. 2. I didn't press it. The car lurched, and slowly, with a metallic groan, it began to rise. My reflection stared back at me from all 4 mirrored panels, except it wasn't mine anymore. The man staring back wore my clothes, my face, but his eyes were hollow. His smile was fixed, frozen, like his skin had forgotten how to move. He raised a hand and waved. I didn't move. He winked. I backed into the corner, refusing to look again. Ding. 2nd floor. The doors opened to a hallway I didn't recognize. The carpet was soaked, squishing underfoot. The walls pulsed slightly, as if breathing. Every door on this floor had been stripped of numbers, except one, room 205. Its door stood open. Inside was light, and the sound of typing. I stepped out. I didn't want to, but I stepped out. Each footfall echoed too loud. The hallway shrank behind me. No exit, no stairwell. I reached the door. Typed words clicked rhythmically from within, like someone transcribing a confession they didn't want to finish. I stepped inside. The room was simple. A bed, a chair, a desk facing the window, and a typewriter. Old manual covered in dust. But the keys moved, fast, relentless, despite no one touching them. Click, clack, click. A single sheet of paper rolled through the feed. I moved closer. The typewriter stopped. I read the page. I worked at a haunted hotel. The rooms wouldn't stay empty. The elevator opened. I stepped inside. The doors closed. It went up. I found room 205. And now I write this. My breath caught. I reached for the paper, only for the typewriter to snap back to life, typing faster, hammering the words out. You shouldn't have come back. There's no shift, only the next turn. Take the chair. The room dimmed. Behind me, I felt it. A presence. Not angry, not welcoming, just expectant. I turned. The chair now faced me, empty, waiting. Something deep inside me knew this was the end of the hallway, the last stop. The hotel hadn't hired me. It had summoned me. And now it needed me to take the desk, to keep the rules alive, to check in the next fool, the next me. Because the rooms don't stay empty. They never do. And someone has to be here when they return their key, without ever being seen. I sat, not because I wanted to, because the hotel had already decided I would. The desk formed around me. The typewriter faded away, and the bell on the counter rang. Ding. I looked up. The lobby was in front of me again, clean, still, timeless, and the front doors creaked open. A man stepped in, young, tired, uncertain. He looked just like I did on my first night. He hasn't seen me yet, but he will, as soon as I slide the rules across the desk and hand him a key.